Hello and welcome to the latest episode of the Property Lifestyle Mastery podcast. On this show, we are having open and honest conversations about investing in property in a way that creates freedom from those that have been there and done it. And we don't just talk about the glossy, sexy stuff on this show, we also talk about the real challenges that are along the way as well. And on this week's episode, I'm joined by the wonderful Natasha Friend, who is a friend and also a former mentee of mine on the Dealmaker Accelerator program. And this week we're having a conversation about how to really get into raising finance. So Natasha really specialises in helping investors who are brand new to raising in finance to get started with that. So how do you get out of your own way to get raising your first 100k and beyond? And we're talking about the honest and unfiltered truth behind what really goes on here with myself and Natasha. Natasha, she's raised over 3.5 million investor finance. They've done over 40 deals to date, a mixture of BRRs and flip deals, and she's also just genuinely a really lovely person. So a fantastic session ahead with me and Natasha. So without further ado, let's do it. Hello, Natasha.
Hello, thank you for having me.
I'm so looking forward to this conversation. I think it's such a different angle that we're generally taking. Like, for those of you who don't know Natasha, you need to know her. She is an amazing person who's done amazing things in property and is someone that I've worked really closely with for a number of years. So we know each other really well, a really good friend as well. And we're both fellow mentors to people in property. So that's really what's kind of spurred this conversation into action, is around raising finance, because there are different phases to raising finance. And whereas I've specialised more in helping people who are already started to raise finance and raising more of it, Natasha's focus with her mentees is more around raising their first chunk of investment, getting that first 100k raised. And so we thought that would be a really nice angle to take for a conversation about some of the challenges, the pitfalls and the insights that you see with people that you're working with when it comes to getting that first 100k raised.
Yeah, it sounds amazing. I'm really looking forward to it.
So maybe just tell us a little bit about the people that you're generally working with. So who are they? Where are they at in their property journey? Just give us some context in terms of who we're thinking about when we're talking today.
Yeah, of course. So I work with a variety of people, but generally they come to me with 0 to potentially 3, 4 properties. So anyone from a complete newbie who's never bought or invested in a property before, to people that have got a few properties, but they've generally done the normal vanilla buy-to-let process. So they've worked really hard or run a successful business, saved up money for a deposit, bought a buy-to-let with a mortgage and rented it out, and that's it. So generally they come to me with a burning desire to really scale and build a property business, but they need some guidance in raising finance to enable them to do that.
Nice. Lovely. So we're really going back to the real fundamentals here then, in terms of like that getting going with finance to be able to do deals. And so I guess even if you're listening to this and you've already raised finance, let's just go back to some of the like nuts and bolts here and really brush up on that, on those fundamental skills. So what would you say then, if someone's brand new to raising finance, they want to get their next deal done, what's some of the biggest blockages or barriers that you see people face?
I think the number one blockage is generally mindset challenges that they need to overcome, whether that just be lack of confidence in having the conversations and raising the finance, or they have an actual fear of losing other people's money, or talking about money. Like, we are very British around money, so a lot of people feel uncomfortable having conversations around money, or just knowing how to answer investor or potential investors' questions or overcoming their objections. I think that's the main thing, just having me as their mentor to guide them through that process and show them how it would work step by step, and how to overcome the main objectives, reassure the investors, and answer any questions that they might have. I think.
And how do you see that fear? Because you like, obviously fear seems like it's like quite a big root of a lot of those things. Like, so how do you help people to see how those fears are playing out? Like, what sort of things do you see?
I think we just sort of go through ways to mitigate the fear, because using the buy, refurbish, refinance model, which is predominantly what I do and teach, there are really good foundations to mitigate the fear of losing someone's money. So you generally, if you're going to borrow 100k, you'd either borrow it and buy a property cash, so that investor has first charge, so they have that security, which is the best security they can possibly have. So if you were to lose their money or not pay them back, they would take over ownership of that asset, or similar with second charge if you needed to use bridging finance. And generally you'd be buying the property below market value. So there's also that element of having the additional equity in the property from day one, from when you're buying it, plus you're going to renovate it and add more value to the property. So hopefully this 100k that they've loaned you is against an asset which is now worth 150k, 200k. So try and explain the ways that you can overcome the investor's fear plus the mentee's fear, and how unlikely it is that you are going to lose money. I mean, even if worst case scenario, the property was downvalued and they weren't able to refinance to pull all of the money back out, they've not lost that money technically. It's still equity in the property. They just can't pull it all back out at that first refinance. So I think explaining the technical side of things really helps reassure them around the fear of losing money, because
Yes.
it is really difficult to lose money in property, especially doing the strategies that we do, because it's not high risk strategies like commercial to residential conversions or big developments or anything. It is quite a low risk property strategy, and as long as you've done your due diligence on the property you're buying, you've analysed it correctly, you've taken all the right steps, then the risk of losing someone's money, I think, is extremely low and unlikely. But the fear.
So what would you say the fear? Yeah, like I think it's really good though, because it's like, I think often with raising finance, we can end up just talking about like where you find investors, like how you get them on board, but actually you're so spot on in terms of like the due diligence for the deal and making sure the deal is actually good enough is such an important part of the overall process. And if you don't factor that in, as part of your process to make sure that you've got a good deal, that's where the problems mostly happen in the first place. Like if you haven't got a good deal and then you bring an investor on board, you're basically on shaky fundamentals from the very beginning.
Yeah, definitely. I think that is a key part as well, why investors like having a mentor, because you've got that extra person to run the analysis with and do your due diligence, and someone to sort of hold your hand and guide you through it and play devil's advocate and look at best worst case scenarios.
So what would you say is important to look at then? Like when we're saying deal due diligence and doing the analysis, what things are encompassed in that part of the process for you?
I think the main things are just making sure the refurb estimate is as accurate as possible. I know you're never going to be spot on, but making sure you've really broken it down into detail and the figures are accurate for your investment area. They can vary significantly whether you're investing in up north or in London, but making sure the prices for your refurbs are spot on and you've got an element of contingency in there as well. And then the other side is the end value and the comparables, making sure you've got really good solid comparables to back up your end valuation, because that's where it can all go wrong, sadly, is the end valuation. And a lot of it is out of your control. But as long as you do this initial due diligence, like I had one mentee recently, bless his heart, we analysed the deal. The end value was 185. We were really certain that was going to be the minimum end value, but he had refinance come through and the surveyor valued it at 165, and we were like, no, there's absolutely no way. Like, you need to try another lender, because he's obviously had a really bad day. Always woke up out of bed on the wrong side and got out on the wrong side of the bed. So within a week, he had another valuation and it came in at 200k. So that's like over 20% difference within 1 week.
Ridiculous.
No.
That's just one of the hardest parts of property, like that part of it. Like the fact that you do all this work and all this analysis, and then you put your fate in the hands of one random probably man who's going to go around and just say whatever number. And it's just like, I think it's, we've all had our fair share of down vals, and just seeing, like, sometimes they're just mistakes, right? Like they've literally just put the wrong figure in the wrong box on the wrong day, but just because of the way the process is, that it can really mess with us a lot. So it's a great story to not be disheartened about it. I had someone who I'm mentoring the other day who got a down valuation and was just hit so hard by it, and just felt a huge amount of like judgment and shame for it being down valued. But that's just part of the process, right?
Yeah, sadly, I think that is the biggest frustration and pain, that a lot of it is outside of our control. No matter how much due diligence we can do, it relies on a good solicitor, a good valuer, a good broker. But yeah, I think having me there to take him through that process was really important for him, because he would have probably just accepted that valuation and moved on. Whereas we looked through the report, the surveyor didn't supply any comparables in his report. There was so many other good comparables that we knew provided a minimum of the 185 that we needed. So I was like, no, we need to go for a second valuation. Even if you only get another 10 grand, it's another 7.5 you can pull back out. But yeah, came in way above what we
it is worth it.
Roller coaster ride for
roller coaster. And so if for any reason you hadn't been able to go out and get that second valuation done, like, how would you take someone through that process if they have money left in the deal? What sort of things do you do, and do you support your mentees to do?
Yeah, I think just making sure it doesn't hit them too hard. Like you said with your mentee, he wasn't going to lose any money. There was still an element of equity that he'd created from that deal. But it definitely did knock his confidence. So I think just being there to re-encourage, re-support, making sure, making sure we provided enough evidence and due diligence for the next deal. I mean, it's out of our control. Is the only thing. I think the main thing is just getting them back on track and making sure it doesn't knock them off, because these things can really affect people's confidence and think, oh, well, this strategy doesn't work. What's the point in doing this? I might as well just buy something with a deposit and go from there. But yeah, I think that's the main thing, is just making sure he sticks on track. He knows that it's not going to happen all the time. There's still, the equity is in the property. Yes, he can't release it right now, but in 2 years' time, he could do another refinance and go again. But
try again.
Yeah, I think it's always worth, if you've got the comparables, it's always worth going with the second lender, just to see.
And then what other mindset challenges do you see people having when they're starting to raise finance?
So another fear is the fear of talking about money or asking for money. And we tried to position it that they're not actually asking people for money. I tried to get them to spin it as a service they're offering, rather than pedestalizing. I can never say that word. Pedestalizing the money and saying money is everything, which in our head we're like, yeah, we need the money, but to spin it into the service that you're offering for the investor. So you're actually providing an amazing service by being able to give them these returns of 8, 10, 12%, whatever it is you can offer. And you're doing all the hard work. So the investor is just bringing the money. So let's really put the money on the bottom step of the pedestal, and get them to, really focus on what they're bringing to the table and what they're offering the investor.
Yeah. So that like acknowledging like your personal worth and your personal value of what you're bringing to the table is something we definitely all struggled with along
Yeah.
the way of like why we're good enough to do that. Like how do you help someone to see that their own worth as part of that?
Well, I think their worth, the worth is really important, but also the amount of work that they have to do to get to that point of finding a deal that's good enough for the buy, refurbish, refinance model to work, plus raising the finance. Like they have to go out and do how many viewings, how many analysis, all the offers, all the negotiations, all the due diligence, and then they have to go through all the refurbishment and the refinance and find the tenants. Like there's so much to it. I try and really emphasize on that. Like the investors got the easy route. There, you've got the short straw by doing all that work. But then the worth side of things, I try to get them to. So when we start, we always do a list of 25 reasons why they're investable.
Nice.
And yeah, the first sort of 5, 10 come really easy, and then you have to really think hard about what makes you investable. Why is someone going to invest in you instead of me or somebody else? And I think a lot of the time it does come down to building the relationships with the investors, which is something I really do like to focus on.
It's
But
really
yeah,
interesting you're saying that actually because we ran our ski retreat last week. And one of the like we did like little fireside chats every evening, and one of the evenings we basically got everyone to like privately write a little note to everyone else who's on the retreat to say a reason that they thought that person was investable. So we all got like we've done it before, like on our DMA retreats, but just like the purely the investable angle. So really similar to what you're doing, but just doing it anonymously from people who've got to know you in some kind of form. I think I got them to do it for me and Dave as well because that'd be really interesting to see. And one of the things that I was most shocked by in like reading that list of what the group's perception of why I would be investable or why they'd want to invest with me was like basically like openness and vulnerability, which I was like, I would never have said as a reason to be to be investable. But actually,
yeah,
the more I've reflected on it, it's kind of what you're saying there is that relationship that you have with people and how authentic and honest you feel that relationship is with that person. And if you are like a vulnerable, open person who shares the challenges along the way, you are building a way stronger connection with another person. And I think there's definitely some sort of it's that kind of pedestal that you were saying, like when you see someone as better than you, like or higher than you somehow hierarchically, you don't open up and connect in the same way, and therefore you would never build that relationship. Do you agree with
yeah,
that?
yeah, that's so true. And I've never thought about it in that way actually. But I suppose it comes back to just being completely honest and open and a good communicator. And yeah, with all of us, you've always been really open and honest and discussed all the challenges and not just the highs, which some people don't feel comfortable, don't want to share the pits, but there are so many challenges and pits with property investing.
And it's not a judgment on us for like, and I think it makes it feel worse, right? Like when you feel like you're the only one that's going through that, you somehow think that you're rubbish at this, but actually it's not about it going perfectly. That's actually not what the investors are buying into. They're buying into not having to deal with the crap when it happens, because you're going to deal with the crap and you're going to get the second survey, you're going to get another builder quote, you're going to pick up when that builder fails. Like you're just going to do whatever it takes to like to sort all that out. Like that's not having to be at the raw end of all of that. That is very valuable.
Yes, definitely. And we will be in that position one day.
Exactly. Okay, so what other challenges do you see your mentees come across when they're starting to raise their first 100K?
So a lot of them just struggle with the idea of pitching to investors or just having those conversations. Like, where do you even start? What do you say? What do you do? So sometimes we spend sessions role playing, literally like meeting someone in a networking event, and how would you then pitch, or not necessarily ask directly, but how would you explain what it is that you offer your investors? So going through that and overcoming any sort of questions, whether that's the legality side of things or the tax implications or objections that they have. A lot of the mentees, even though they don't like it in the current session, really find it's awkward. It's never usually fun, but they find massive benefits from doing that and going through, because I know the questions we've asked, I can ask them. So if they're out speaking to potential investors, I can ask them the questions our investors have asked us when we were raising finance. So yeah, I think helping people to understand the step-by-step process really gives them the confidence to then have those conversations and relay the same things to the investors that they're talking to.
And what would you say are some of the mistakes that you see people making? Like when you're doing these role plays and like you are assuming them some feedback about how it's gone and how they could do better. Like what do you see? Are there any like consistent themes where people slip up?
Yeah, I think sometimes they just jump into it too quickly or ask for money too quickly. Whereas I like to really understand the investors' goals and their values and what's their reason for wanting to invest, what's their reason for not wanting to buy the properties themselves, to really get to know them a bit more. So I would say like the first 10, 15 minutes of the conversation should really be around understanding that person. And then you can sort of spin it into the service that you offer and how that connects to their values and their goals and what it is they're looking to achieve. Some people just jump straight in. Oh yeah, I've got a deal I'm looking to raise 100k for, and I'm like,
oh, too soon. And they're like, I'll think about it. I'll come back to you. Send me a deal pack and I'll have a look.
Yes. So yeah, I mean, obviously, when you're at a networking event, it's quite hard to have these longer conversations. But if you can get the initial bite into it to then later meet for coffee or have a Zoom call to really get to know that person before you start pitching or talking about what it is you want. Let's find out what it is that they want and they need. Yeah, and really focus on that. What else do they do? Yeah, maybe, just talking too much about them, their needs and the deal. Yeah. I think you've got to create a win-win situation is the main thing, isn't it? You've got to make it work for both of you.
I think it's hard when it's like, because it's kind of like you want to know what you can offer someone, but then it's almost like you have to, for a period of time, put that to one side and just listen and just see if there's a way with what that person's looking for, with what you can do. Is there some kind of intersection of that? But in order to be able to see that, you've almost got to like almost let go of what you're trying to get out of the conversation and then just and listen. And sometimes it might be a slight variation on how you would ideally do something, but ultimately it wouldn't be that hard for you to do, because generally, like, we don't pay our investors monthly. There are some investors though that we do pay interest to monthly, and that's kind of come out of, again, what you're saying there, like you're listening and you're responding. And I think when you do that, you end up coming up with a solution that maybe you wouldn't have considered other time. Like I sometimes think like investors, particularly those who are around property, they want to create passive income from property. And everyone thinks, well, then I've got to go and buy properties to get the passive income from property. That's a hard road, right? That's a lot of deals to be done to get to that point. Whereas actually, if you can just invest with someone who is already, doing the thing already and can give you a return on your money, and maybe they do have the means to be able to pay you monthly, like you have created passive income from property without having to go through the whole portfolio building process. And I hadn't quite thought about it in that way until a few years ago, when we started doing that same thing, exactly what you're saying, just listening and responding, and how can I help this person to get that outcome through investing in property. Sounds so simple, but in the moment it's actually quite hard.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, one of my mentees, they had an investor who funded a project, went really well, paid them back, And he said, "Oh, I'm not going to reinvest this time." And it was just the fact that he wanted the income monthly. So he went back and asked the right questions and really understood what it was that he wanted. And he's gone on to invest in two more projects now, and he just receives the interest monthly because that's what was important to him. But because it wasn't discussed up front as to how he could pay the interest, he just said, "No, I'm not happy to. I don't want to go again, but thank you." And then he went back and pried and asked some more questions, and now they're both really happy.
It sounds too simple. But I guess and like none of this is like in concept is that complicated, but it's just the barriers that we put in the way of ourselves to get.
Yeah, I think sometimes we make it a lot more complicated than what it is, or mentees make it in their mind more complicated than what it is. But actually, it's really quite simple, and the step by steps that you take from speaking to someone who says, "Yes, I'm ready to go ahead, I want to invest with you," to actually completing on the property, it is really quite simple. But we like to overcomplicate things, don't we? In our brain, we think that it's too easy and it can't be like that.
Yes, it's very true. So then tell me, what are some of the places where people get hung up maybe on more of the tax or the legal side? Where do people get stuck there?
Yeah, so around the documents, what do they need when? Do they need this for that? So like the heads of terms document, loan agreement, a personal guarantee, the legal charge document. A lot of them are actually dealt with the solicitor, but it's knowing at what point do you need what and who's going to do what, I think, and actually understanding the content that's in them. Because if the investor asks questions about them, they want to be able to reply and
Yes.
know what they're talking about.
And so how do you like maybe give us a little bit of a breakdown of what you sort of thing you would say to people at that point? Like who does what? That's like quite a good question, I think, that seems obvious once you're doing it. Go on. Well, how do you break that down?
Well, I just say heads of terms is a really basic, simple agreement. You can literally write it on a piece of paper yourselves. It just outlines what you've agreed with your investor. So what's the loan amount, what's the term, what's the interest, when's it going to be paid? And then from the heads of terms agreement, the solicitor can draw up the loan agreement. So all you really need to do is the heads of terms, pass that on to a solicitor. They can do the loan agreement and the personal guarantee, or we do ours ourselves with a template now, but that will be the foundations of the loan agreement or the facility agreement. And then the solicitor will deal with the first charge if they're taking first charge on the property. So yeah, it is really simple. All you need to do is tell your solicitor what you've both agreed. But the heads of terms can be quite useful because you can agree to draw down the funds within a period of time. So if you're new to property investing and you're looking for deals and looking for investors at the same time, if you found an investor who's willing to invest with you, you could say, "Look, can we do a 3-month drawdown period? So that will give me 3 months to go and find a property and complete on it. And then at that point would then draw down the funds." You could put in something like, if we don't draw it down within the 3 months, we'd start paying you an interest rate, a reduced rate, to keep them happy, to keep them on board. Because what you don't want to do is get someone to say, "Yeah, happy to invest in you in your project," but then you can't find something or you don't complete on it because so many things out of your control, like solicitors, vendors. You don't complete on it within that 3-month period, and they're like, "Well, actually, I need to get this money working harder, so I can't sit around and wait for you." So having little clauses like that within the agreement can be quite useful as well.
Really good. And then, so I'm also interested on one of the problems I've seen on the flip side is someone raising finance from an investor, not having a deal yet, but taking the money already when they don't have a deal. Is this something that you've seen as a problem that any of your mentees have done? And talk about the problems with that.
Yeah, maybe once or twice, but something I try to avoid. Because you can end up being in a sticky situation and losing quite a bit of money. But I think it is very much chicken and egg though, isn't it? What comes first, the deal or the investor? So trying to do both simultaneously is what I try to get them to focus on, equal amounts of time on finding the deal plus finding the investor. But yeah, ideally you don't want to take the money until you've got the project.
At least line of sight on something, right?
Yeah.
I think like for us, we're like 4 to 6 weeks potentially in advance of a deal completing. We might take the money in so that you can do all the money laundering, etc. before the property completes. But I think it's probably one of the biggest places that I've seen people who are new to raising finance get stuck or cause problems down the line. Like if you've got a 12-month loan agreement and you take the money in straight away and it takes you 3 months to find a deal, 3 months to complete on the deal, then you've only got 6 months to refurb it and refinance it. And refinancing can take a long time at the moment. And then you end up like you're not going to have time to get it done before the loan comes to an end. And I've seen investors get obviously really hacked off by this. It can happen, but I think obviously communication is another thing maybe we can talk about separately. But like that's I think a place where people can really get unstuck very early on if they don't manage that right.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I think you guys work slightly different with the way that we do it. We generally don't take the money at all. It goes through the solicitor and they deal with the completion, and then any surplus comes back to us. But yeah, I think if you were going to take smaller amounts or take it yourself, I think it's quite important to make sure you've got a deal.
Sounds simple.
Yeah.
Yeah. And what about I think one of the golden questions that everyone has when they start to raise finance is like, where are all the investors? Like, where are they all hanging out? What's
Yeah.
your wisdom in this area?
I think like easiest route first, tap into your current network. So whether that's people you went to school with, used to work with, Bob's sister's uncle that you know, your neighbor, whoever it is that already knows you, likes you hopefully, and trusts you, makes it the much quickest, easiest route. Because I think to start from scratch with someone completely brand new is a lot harder. So our first route and our first challenge is to not attack, not physically attack anyway.
Don't do that.
But to approach people in your current network, or at least getting them seeing what you're doing and hearing about what you're doing, because there is money everywhere, and you'd be really surprised with some people that actually have, whether it's inheritance or they've sold a business or money that you're not aware of. It is everywhere, and you'll be surprised who actually has money. So going to people that are already in your network is our first point of call. If you don't have anyone in your network, then it's really a case of just building relationships as quickly as possible, and using things like social proof, social media, documenting your journey and your challenges and your learnings, and really trying to build some evidence and some knowledge behind you to give you that element of trust that I think investors need. And we are really lucky that we've got social media now, so we can reach thousands and thousands of people by tapping into all these different groups and platforms. But I think it does take time. I have actually raised investment without building relationships, but usually
It's the exception.
usually I think there's an element of how many touch points you need to have with that person before they're ready to go, commit, unless you've already had those over your past experiences with them through school, work, college, university, whatever it was.
Yes. And how do you suggest people go and approach people in their existing networks? I think this is often where people, I think, can go a bit wrong and getting, again, maybe it's just the pitching too early point. Like, what's your advice about starting to potentially reach out to your existing network without getting all icky and salesy?
Yeah. So starting to document things through your social media so they all can already see that there's stuff going on, I think is the first point. And then I would say to present themselves quite professionally, so make sure that they've got an investor pack or something that they can share with them, or a deal pack, and it's done professionally, I think is quite important to have like an element of your branding and logo there. And yeah, just asking people whether they would spare you 10, 15 minutes to just give you some feedback on your presentation or your pack, I think is a good way of doing it. So you're not actually asking them, would they invest, but would you give me 10, 15 minutes of your time, whether it's someone who works in finance or law or an accountant, just to tap into their particular expertise and try and get feedback from them. And that's gently planting a seed as to, this is the service that we offer, and if you've got money sat in the bank, this is what we can do. So doing that through, professionally presenting it to them over Zoom, or just by having a coffee with them and asking them for their feedback on your presentation, because you're currently raising finance for a deal that you're purchasing. I think it's a nice, soft, gentle opening into having the conversation, because if they are interested, after seeing the way it works and how you can secure their money and offer them a guarantee and the rates that you can pay, I think without asking, you're just presenting it and planting the seed, is a nice soft opening.
Nice. I like it. And then what about FCA regs as part of all of this?
Yeah, I mean, that's something you've got to be really careful of, especially if you're promoting it on social media. The PS 13.3 document is, I think it's very grey. It's not black and white. So it's a very grey area, but I just think protect yourself and follow the basic guidelines, and make sure if you're promoting an investment, then you need to make sure that they're a sophisticated investor or a high net worth individual, or if they're a friend or family member, they can be excluded from that. I think it's something you need to be aware of, but I also wouldn't let it stop you, because that's another fear that our mentees have is, oh, what if I say this or do this, or I'm wrong, like being worried they're going to be fined by the FCA. I think it's something to be really mindful of, but not to put too much pressure on yourself that you're going to
Fear around it.
Yeah.
And I think like it's if you step back from it, it's all part of the process that works and is good anyway. Like, we shouldn't be pitching deals to people until we know we've built a relationship and that person has actually shown interest in investing. Like, so we've not gone out and actively, we're not pitching, we're not putting deals on social media and offering investment opportunities. Like, we're making sure people know that we work with investors and we invest in property, but we're not pitching the specific opportunities. We're building those relationships, raising awareness of what we do, getting to know people, and there's some paperwork that you've got to do to document it, but really it's just basically build relationships first and make sure it's the right thing for that person, for them to invest with you. Like, it's not a crazy thing for them to ask for us to actually go through that process.
No, not at all. And like you said, I think it's a good thing, because it will protect vulnerable people, and anyone investing their only £20,000 and they've got no other assets or money or equity anywhere. It's not something I would want to do, that's for sure.
No, and they'll be a very hard work investor as well.
Yes. Yeah. So I think, like you said, it's a good process, but I do think there's a lot of fear around it at the minute. Social media, people jumping on people's posts and saying, you can't do that, you're breaking the rules, blah, blah, blah. Just make sure you follow the guidelines and don't promote and use all these adjectives and compare apples to pears and guarantee things. I think if you follow those basic guidelines, you'll be fine.
And then let's just do a couple of your top tips then for social media. Like, if you're starting to raise finance and you're wanting to use social media, like, even if that's like more of a longer term, not maybe long term, medium term part of the plan, what's your top tips for that?
Top tips, I would say utilize the groups, the big property groups, because there's thousands and thousands of people in there, and you're going to reach more people than posting on your own pages, especially if you're just starting out. I think make it personable, not like some people set up a business page and it's just their logo and you don't, how can you build a relationship and know, like, and trust someone if you don't see their face or them personally? So I think having a personal brand is really important. Documenting as much as you can, that anything that you've learned or a challenge you've overcome or reviewing that you've been on and you found out XYZ about this type of property. Yeah, I think being as active as you can, but also knowing who your target market is and getting into more detail. This is more your sort of thing, the investor avatar, and knowing the types of investors you want to work with. Whereas we love to work with entrepreneurs and business owners and people who are property investors themselves because they've already got the knowledge around it, but they're wanting to put their eggs in many baskets and diversify and have more things that are hands off because they're really scaling their business at the minute or they're doing a big consultancy project. So yeah, building your personal investor avatar and who you want to work with then enables you to market your social media posts at them directly.
Yeah, it's really nice. I think it's really interesting actually because I think we're obviously doing like social media challenges with people who are looking to raise finance, and it's really interesting seeing how the profiles that are too professional,
Yeah,
just they don't work. Like, people invest, particularly when you're really small, they're not investing with some big business. There's plenty of other places they can go for that. They're investing with you because they buy into you and what you're doing and the fact that you're going to be taking care of all of it. So then if you start to put just, it's all about your company logo and your company colors and your face isn't anywhere. And I think people too often trying to delegate social media too soon to virtual assistants, for example, who don't know you or your business. They're not going to put you across in social media, and it doesn't work. Like, as scary as it is, like, we got to bring ourselves on socials, because then people are building that relationship with you through social media. So I think that's as scary as it is, it's a really good point.
Yeah, 100%. And I think it affects the algorithms as well, especially on Facebook, to get the reach through a business page versus a personal. It's a lot harder.
100%. Nice. Anything else on your list of sort of mistakes or things that you consistently see people are getting stuck with when they're starting to raise finance?
I think just starting, like, just go out there and stop spending time building websites and doing all this stuff. Like, if you're not going to raise the finance and not going to find the deals, then there's no need for a website. I think some people, they're like, oh, I need all this, I need to spend thousands of pounds building a website and a logo and this, that, and everything to be all professional before they'll even have conversations. But I think getting out there and just go start building the relationships, go start explaining to people how you can help them with the service you can offer through property, is really important. And there is money everywhere. It's just, you've got to tell everyone how you can help them and what you can do, and making sure you're overcoming objections like, is their money safe? How do you protect their money? What if XYZ happens? Like, getting really clear on your exit options as well, and making sure there's more than one. By going out and just having the conversations is the best way to learn, I think. Really know what's going on in the investors' minds. But you need to put yourselves in the right places as well.
It's really nice. I think you do make everything come across like very clear and very simple in the way that you say things. And I think it's like, I've always loved how in working with you, you just have always got the important stuff done. Like, you're always raising finance, you're always getting the deals done. And yes, we go through the highs and lows along the way, but I just think you've always been so good at prioritizing the actions that are going to matter when it comes to deals and investors. And clearly you're putting that across to people who are just getting started in a very clear and easy to understand way. So it's really nice to understand some of that. Obviously we're very aligned in the method, right? Like, how we've worked together for many years, and I think that's one of the reasons I really think you're a brilliant mentor. Like, we've got a very similar school of thought for how we're doing it, but it's just really nice hearing how you're sort of tailoring that to people who are just getting going in this area.
Oh, thank you. That's really lovely. But yeah, I think if you're not going to raise finance and find deals, then there's no business. So
it's all pointless.
Yeah.
Forget the fancy website. Too many conversations going, just forget about the damn website. I don't care about the website. I think, some people are raising so much money without a website, without investor packs, with like nothing, because they're just good at relationships. And I think potentially people don't struggle so much with like the confidence and self-worth, because I think brochures and websites are a way of us trying to feel like somehow we're good enough underneath it all. But the fact that you're doing all of this work and this training and this learning and putting it into action, like, there's so much good stuff there. It's just being able to recognize it in ourselves.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's a big thing to continuously work on, because I think there's always going to be mindset blockages and self-worth issues, no matter how hard you work on yourself. But pushing yourself out of your comfort zone as well is so rewarding, because is it the dopamine that it releases just by building up that confidence and doing things that you wouldn't normally do, being in your circle of comfort, will help as well, because that will build up your confidence and your self-worth by me pushing you out the door to the networking event, or making you post
true
social media. It's just lovely. I do really enjoy mentoring and helping people overcome these blocks and challenges, and seeing the success that they can create. I get more excited when we get a deal than when I do now. So
you're trying to get the dopamine hit through them now.
Yeah.
So tell me what's your if someone's sitting here listening to this and they want to start raising finance, like, what's your one biggest takeaway that you would want them to have off the back of listening to this conversation today?
Biggest takeaway. I think just do it. Like, let go of the fear. Make sure, have the conversations, discuss with a mentor or a partner or a friend your fears, understand them, and then just do it. Just get out there and start having the conversations, because if you don't have the conversations, then nobody's going to know what you can do for them, how you can give them these amazing returns through property on a completely hands-free, painless process. If you don't talk about it, how will anyone know? So I think just start talking about it.
Amazing. Thank you so much to Natasha. I hope you really enjoyed this week's episode. If you want to reach out and get in touch with Natasha off the back of today's show, her contact details are in the show notes, and her email address is natasha@friendpropertygroup.co.uk. And if you're just getting started in property, or you're looking at raising your first investor finance, Natasha Friend should be the top of your list to contact to see how she can help you. I highly recommend her. Meanwhile, next week, you'll be back with myself and Dave for the next episode of the Property Lifestyle Mastery podcast, and we're talking about the biggest deal killers, how we've been hurt and what we have learnt. So we're going to be talking about the sneaky ways that finance can cost more than you think it does, refurb budgets and how it can go wrong, why all money out deals aren't necessarily a great thing. Some amazing stuff to be discussed next week. So until then, have a fantastic week ahead.